and KTLO, keeping
Keeping the
the
learning
learning on.
on.
Yes, there we go. All right, so
Horrible.
here, it's all the beginning is always horrible. It's part of the fun of doing this
That's
show
kind of
or
our stick.
this gathering.
Apparently,
It is.
apparently, it's our thing.
It's our thing. If we have a thing, this is the thing, and it's great. Welcome back. It's Friday. We're
Good morning.
Here. We're in.
Good evening.
Just to give you a little insight here, Patty is in Alberta, Canada. Greg is in Oregon.
It's gone. It went.
Yeah, it is gone. Simone is in France, and which is what, southwest?
Yes,
Central,
in the southwest.
Southwest of France.
Oui,
I'm here in South Carolina. So bless your hearts for showing up. And it's a pleasure to be back every Friday. We are up to episode 17, folks.
17.
Episode 17. This is a continuing conversation. It's not a webinar. It's not a training class. It is a thing that it didn't start out as a thing.
It's a thing.
It has bubbled up into a thing.
It has bubbled up into a thing.
So today we're going to talk about midair transfer. What?
Hey.
What? Well, we're going to talk about the whole thing and how it relates to transitions that we make and how we might plan for those or not, and prepare ourselves or not. And so midair transfer. We just go with the flow. Midair transfer. So the first element of that is that in order to move from A to B with nothing but air in between, you have to let go of A. And that's going to be kind of a continuing theme here today. But so we got to let go. So we talked about preparing or not. So what are you preparing?
So, we often talk about how we want to transition things, whether it's individually, in our team, in our organization, and we have discovered, those of us who are consulting transformation and change, in that it's all in there's a huge amount of prep required before you can move forward. And what you're preparing to be able to let go, to be comfortable, to trust, to have the ability to let go, there's a whole load of preparation that is involved, right? At least in my opinion.
Yeah.
No, you're completely wrong. I don't agree with that at all.
I was waiting for that.
You were asking for it, so I gave it to you. No, that's the thing. So I worked for an organization that was heading into a massive transformation. And one of the things that I realized in retrospect is that organization made a lot of small changes that at the time I thought were unimportant. Why are we changing this? Why are we doing all this? And later I look back on it, and what they were doing was building change resiliency, or the ability to transition from a state to another. And I think that's part of the preparation that you're talking about there, is how prepared are you for transition? Are you the victim of everything that comes along? Is it everything scary, or is there any level of seeing of opportunities or whatnot? So there is a mental state of being optimistic and looking towards the future. And I think when we start talking about the actual trapeze, I think that's when that's going to come in.
The very
absolutely.
First transition that I ever did, where I was responsible for the organizational change, was about 15 years ago. And that, I won an award for it. And looking back, I think, oh my gosh, I did not deserve that award, because it was the very first time I had embarked on a major organizational change that was impacting, a large company, an international company. And all of the prep that I did not do was why I got into the field of change, transformation, and leadership was because, as far as I'm concerned, I was like, yeah, I don't understand why anybody doesn't want to just do this thing. It makes so
but
much
Patty,
good
you know
sense.
what? I'm going to disagree with you on the fact that you said you don't deserve that because it was your first time out. What I actually think happens, especially after all the murders and acquisitions I've been involved with, is that, you know, quite often we see things that first time round, we see things that we weren't expecting, and it gives us the oohs and the ahs, and we're able to translate that into something for the others and bring them along with that. So I do disagree. I mean, if you look at the lithograph behind me, so just a quick history on the trapeze, since that seems to be sort of the core storyline, if you like, or our analogy. Let me use the analogy that we have, that since I'm in France, that the art of the trapeze performance was actually developed by Jules Lyotard. And yes, I did use the word leotard. So anyone that wears a leotard, this is where it came from. And this was in the mid.
You knew it had to be French.
Of course it had to be French. Ooh la la. Imagine sorry, wrong topic. Anyway, so the mid 1800s. And he invented the flying trapeze while he was practicing over his father's swimming pool. So think about that. While he's trying out this new way of doing things, trying to discover what could happen, how it could happen, he still had a sense of safety, you know, by being, you know, falling into his father's pool and things like that. And I think that you had that same thing. You knew that there was something better on the other side. You knew that it was going to happen, that it could become a reality. So don't diss yourself on that,
No,
because
and
I think
that
that's
wasn't a
really
diss.
cool.
That wasn't a diss.
Yeah.
That was, we didn't go to the work as an organization to try really hard to understand what it would take to get us there.
Yeah.
The transformation we were trying to achieve impacted 15 different project management teams, and we had an impact in 40 different countries. So while you took a look at, you know, yes, this makes sense, when I was going through it, I kept thinking, I think we have a leadership problem, but really we didn't. We had an approach problem. And it was we hadn't prepared ourselves for that mid-air transfer, right? There wasn't trust there. It was impossible to get commitment without trust. It was impossible to own it if you didn't know where it was going. So
I think you have a right thing there when talking about in preparation and understanding the risks, you know, in terms of that approach. And that's something I've always, you know, those of us, you know, when you've sat in the seat at the circus watching the trapeze artists do their thing, that we don't always see what goes on behind the scenes in terms of the depth of what needs to occur. And there's a great deal, a lot of people probably don't appreciate this, there's a great deal of risk management and the approaches that we make into that goes into it. So, you know, here's the trapeze artists, they're doing these big performances, but, you know, all that, however many meters below, they've got like these moon faces watching up at them and going, ooh and ah, and because it is risky and the audience knows it's risky, but they've put all these other things in place to make that happen. And as a result of that, wanting to know, you know, we have to trust in the who and the what that's going to catch us on the other side as we let go.
Without great preparation, you can't be out of lines, which means without safety lines, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
The trapeze theory, as you might suspect, is actually documented. There's a link there that you guys can go check it out. But it's essentially a documentation of a fairly well-known model of transition from one state to another. So we find ourselves, when we're dealing with transition, change, you know, moving from one state of being to another, is we're in some place and then we're somewhere between the two, and then we're where we want to be. And so this this article actually is about organizational change management, but he talks about how do we motivate an organization, individuals within that organization, to want to change, to desire to change, to hope for a new state. And then when we're in that kind of that mid-air between what was and what's going to be, is how do we get people safely there? How do we make sure people actually come along with this? And this is just a framework, and we're gonna kind of dig into that a little bit. But once we get there, once you grab onto the bar on the other end, there's also that thing of how do we make sure that we stay safely there? Because, in organizational change management, even personal management of change, is there's that tendency to revert back to what was, or to slide back to some former state. So the idea of staying in a new state is part of the whole trapeze theory. Now, the interesting thing about the trapeze, if you look at it as an analogy, is there is an intentionality of I've let go of that bar and it goes back and swings back, and now I'm entirely dependent on the other bar. So unless I turn around and come back and transition back to there, so it tends to be binary, and real life isn't quite that clean, I think.
No, real life is never that clean. But I like what you just said, and that article actually, when I took a look at it this morning, this is what caught me, is that whoever wrote this, number one, I love that we started with that theme, and there's somebody that actually wrote that. But I think that the big thing is that change isn't about fighting resistance. That change is about moving people forward. And one of the expressions I really dislike is, oh, people don't like change. That isn't true.
I so agree with you on that one.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, you get a new car, the first thing you do is you sit in there for 2 hours and you go through every little button and gadget. You're so excited about it. And then you want to drive it around and show your friends, and you take a picture in front of it. And, change is, if we want change, if we're given a really good reason why change is important to us, and we're prepared in a way that makes us feel comfortable and safe, then we can move forward. And so it's a real trust model to build the preparation to get there, right?
I had a senior manager in an organization once at a town hall meeting with a few thousand people said, people aren't resistant to change. And everybody in the audience is kind of like, wait, what? Like, because we all know everybody's resistant to change. He said, no, people are resistant to be rendered irrelevant. And
absolutely.
That's that fear factor, is like, I know where I fit, good, bad, or indifferent. I mean, sometimes we prefer a bad situation or a suboptimal situation simply because it's the devil that we know, versus that one over there. I don't know. Maybe I don't have the skills. Maybe I'm not relevant. Maybe they don't need.
It's a very common saying, isn't it? That whole shifting, in that space of having that ability, having, I guess, the psychological safety and wanting to let go. You want to have some, I don't know, sometimes it's just a vision, sometimes it's just an idea, but some other people need something more concrete, to move to. So I don't think it's resistance at all. I think it's just purely about providing the right vision, mission, capabilities, depending on the level that person's comfortable with in letting go.
I think comfort is a very interesting word there too. If let's take, for example, something similar to the trapeze that an awful lot of organizations have been doing over the past few years, the zip line, right? Everybody goes on the zip line when you go on the corporate retreat. And so now you're on this platform, you're however many feet off the ground, and you're going to be zooming across a lake or over the trees or however it's set up. What does it take you to get to step off that platform exactly? For me, it would take probably the 82nd Airborne and part of the 1st Army Division. Because I suffer greatly since my 20s from acrophobia, which is, extreme fear of heights. I have physical pain about height. It's just
absolutely
bizarre.
Yep.
But so to get me to step off that platform or let go of the trapeze would be a huge undertaking, and it would take a lot of momentum. But then once you do let go, you're in a state. There's a great German word, schwebt, which is the suspension between two places. It's a terrific word. It's like those magnetic toys. Some desk toys have this thing where it's a football helmet or a model of the Earth or something suspended between two magnetic poles. That's stripped. So that state, once you're in the air, now you're between trapeze A and trapeze B. And it's a very interesting state to be in, that state of transition. And I think people do find that exciting and exhilarating.
I think there needs to be an understanding and knowledge management as opposed to the physical state of acrobatics or sports. So if you look at diving, if you look at any of the sports that involve having to go to extreme measures in order to be competitive, you look at those and they never start with, let's put you up on the 15-meter the first time, right? I mean, it's about prep. It's about, how do we support you? How do we equip you? In fact, when my daughter was in diving, they didn't even go to the pool. It was all trampolines for the first, 6 weeks, and how to really form your body, how to be in the air, what you're going to do, how you're going to land, where you're going to be, and being comfortable with that. But when we do knowledge transfer in an organization, we say, hey, there's this great new thing, and you're all going to have to self-learn it, but it's coming out in 3 weeks, and just prepare, yourself. We have to get better at that in organizations. And in order to get our people to let go and grab that next bar is utilization. That's how we're going to grow our organization to utilize whatever it is we're changing toward, and be able to stay there and grow that for our strategy. In order to grab that bar, they have to do the trampoline for a while, right?
Oh, yeah.
So in the bottom left, there's some terms that, as I understand it, since I'm not a trapezist, and that just proves that I'm not. As I understand, those are common words in the field of trapeze. Let's talk about some of those. Listo calls go. Talk to me about that. Roya, you were talking about that the other day.
Yeah, listo is just the Spanish word for ready. Listo, lista, both used, Patty. The feminine and the masculine. It's just, are you ready? Ready to go.
Yeah. So that's the listo is the person that says, so that's your go, no go, right? This is
I was just waiting for that. That's the same they do in NASA. It's the same they do for any of that kind of stuff.
So your listo is the person with the ultimate authority who watches carefully and makes sure that you have the ability to do your go, no go. And they shout it like, hut. You'll hear that when you're watching trapeze artists, hut. And it's the listo yelling, it's your time. And for whatever call they're in, whatever position you're in, is when they'll call.
And that has to be matched up, right? The trapeze is swimming back and forth in a rhythm, not necessarily perfectly symmetrical, but calculated so that the timing is right. When someone lets go, they can catch the other one.
They have to feel that and I guess I bring it back to music in some sense, that collaboration that flows between them. There is someone that is the catcher, and that catch point, some people don't even want to let go yet until they know that they can see and feel that rhythm, that at that catch point that the two of them are going to meet, that they're going to let go at the same time they're going to be caught.
The thing is, though, the distance between the two, when the catcher is about to catch, the distance between the two is enough that if the guy coming off the bar hasn't let go, their hands won't meet.
Exactly.
And that gets us to the heart of the matter.
Right.
So there's your preparation. And I think we really could not overemphasize the importance of preparation. And it's more than like you said, some OCM person standing up and saying, and change is coming and resistance is futile and make sure you get on board and blah blah, all these things. Organizations try so hard and do that, but it's a skill, it's a muscle kind of thing, if you will, of really being prepared for change. Now, the one thing that I want to do for anybody that's listening to us now or on recording is that this isn't all about organizational change. This is not all about my company is adopting a new tool or moving into a new market or merging with another company. This could be me getting ready to make a phone call. This could be me going to my boss to have a crucial conversation. This could be very small things, but that are very, very big for me. I'm not, it might be that I don't perceive myself as the kind of person that has that kind of a conversation. So for me, getting ready to have that kind of conversation is a transitional moment. I'm going to transition from being a person who hasn't or didn't or doesn't traditionally like that conversation to somebody who has. And I wouldn't mind hearing your guys' thoughts on personal transitions in this context.
I would like to throw out that there is we've all heard the expression, it's like an organ, right? Like you have to work your brain is like a muscle. So agility is like a muscle. The more you do it, the better you get at it. And that whole agility piece isn't just, none of us wake up saying, you know what, I think I'll learn how to play piano and next week I'm going to do a major concerto.
Sorry, I shouldn't have laughed just then, but it's just, I know it's like, there are people that are prodigies and it will just be this incredible, magnificent moment, but that's so rare.
But even a prodigy has a period of learning. They give themselves that period of learning. It might be shorter than yours or mine would be. Mine's way down here when it comes to the piano. But I think taking responsibility for that is on the top of that bubble on the right-hand side. And the reason is because you're responsible for your life, your career, your family, your community, and how you approach all of that. Some of the ability, when you talk about just making that phone call, I can tell you right now, I've talked to numerous people who cannot do a cold call, no matter what. They are so afraid of calling someone they don't know and being unable to actually state, what their want might be, right? And so taking accountability for certain things like your own career, your own life, your own position, all of those pieces is part of the personal prep for transformation.
Yeah, and I think recognizing in ourselves that it is a transition point for you, that you're facing a fearful situation, maybe not fearful, but there's a certain anxiety around whatever that thing is for you. And to treat it not as you're a bad person and I just need to buck it up and go at this, is treat it more as a transition point, is build the trust, make the investment, do the hard work, do the preparation, which ironically, most of that prep, as you had pointed out, happens back at home, quietly in the back room, on a trampoline, not over the swimming pool, where it's very tremendously unglamorous. I had a friend whose daughter was a collegiate level gymnast, and I went and saw a performance, and it was fantastic to see people. And when his daughter came over to talk to him, her feet were blistered and bloodied and wrapped with tape, and she was just horribly, horrendously disfigured. And that's all the stuff that most of us don't see, how hard that she worked and the injuries.
That's why you don't want to see my toes after working in toe shoes for so long in ballet. It just is not pretty.
That's exactly right.
This is the thing. It's I actually want to pick up on that point when you said, well, not so much fear, anxiety. Anxiety is a form of fear. So if we just use the word fear, there's different levels of that, or different intensities of that. Fear still exists. Okay, that fear still exists. So if we talk about that catch point and all the other things that go around on either side of that, building up to the moment, and at that moment of letting go, regardless of the fear and what intensity, there's still also a point of exhilaration, because the body will take over. There is adrenaline pumping. Whether that adrenaline, and this is part of your crocodile brain, whether that adrenaline is, it's that fight, flight, freeze. So at that moment, and it truly is a choice that happens, is that we may still fall. There's the moment of pulling our energy back in because, or there's that moment where we're going to extend and reach out and fly further than we first thought was possible. So there is that balance point of choice, and it really does hinge on our hope and our encouragement, and whether we feel that we've had enough of the prep and that we have enough resilience to actually reach out or pull back. And that's why I bring it back to risk management. There is no judgment. There is no shame in having a net to catch you. There really isn't.
Mm-hmm.
So, if you plan and you put that net in place, okay, if you want to be the daredevil and have no net, that's fine, but you have to accept the consequences of the risk management when it comes to not having the net. But there's no shame in having the net. And that's how we learn. That's how we build resistance, is at that catch point, the hope and encouragement. If we fall, we fall, but we rebuild that and go, okay, now we're starting to build the relationship with the person that's catching us, and examining that rhythm and the timing.
I'd just like to point out that apparently Patty, and that's one of Patty's paintings behind her when you see her on screen, apparently she's been paying attention to Bob Ross, because the net in the illustration that she did here is a happy little net. It's got a smile.
I saw that.
It's a smiling net. It's a happy net.
It's a happy net.
It's a happy little net, and it's there to catch you and make you feel better.
It's her pocket of happiness.
It's a pocket
you can
of happiness.
fall into your
Excellent.
pocket of happiness.
Oh, that's wonderful.
Boom.
That's great.
So I want to talk a little bit about that, though. I want to talk a little bit about the pocket of happiness and that happy little net. If you look at the fellow or woman, whoever it is that's swinging in that diagram, they're swinging from their knees, and timing is everything, right? I mean, in comedy, when we talked about that, maybe one of the other episodes, but timing is everything when you're talking about a transfer. And there are a lot of people who themselves have done the work, but the people or the support system around them isn't necessarily ready for them. So that's one situation. Another situation is, those are like when we're talking about personal change, we're talking about your family, we're talking about the mentors that you have, everything. We need sometimes to have those people around us for us to trust that the preparation is ready. Sometimes we just need somebody else to say, you've got this, right? The other scenario might be that those pockets of happiness, and we're talking organizationally now, if you're in an organization where you feel forced to create pockets of happiness, you've got an organizational problem, right? I think that unless that is significantly an indicator of the fact that your top leadership team is not aligned. And if your top leadership team is not aligned, then you feel like you have to step away and create this new little happy organization where there's less conflict and less competitiveness and that's your net, right?
Yeah.
So you really have to not just take a look at what's my hard work, what is my responsibility, what do I have to research to get there, what do I have to learn, do I need a certification, do I need to do anything to change my life, but what does my support system look like, and how do I make that a happy support system? Sometimes it's setting boundaries, sometimes it's telling your family, listen, this person you thought you knew I was is about to change into something you're not ready for. I need you to come with me, right?
No, that's actually usually when my mum or dad were warning me they're about to actually have words.
See, and my parents never had any words at all. So there you go.
I love that. So this is we've talked a lot about endings, mid-air and new beginnings, and some of you might be familiar with the work of William Bridges. It's pretty dated. It's some of the stuff that I studied many years ago, but he talks about managing transitions. It's worth taking a look at his material, but essentially distilled down to its essential elements is for there to be a change, something is ending, and it doesn't necessarily mean something's going away. It could be the end of life without this thing that is now upon us, right? So that to some degree he talks about there's an ending, and that's the beginning of a transition. And the neutral zone is what he calls that airspace between what was and what's going to be. And the new beginning is actually the release of new energy in a new direction. I love that, or energy in a new direction. I love that idea. And one of the things that he talks about is in the neutral zone is we want to encourage people to start envisioning possibilities, because one of the things that I think that helps people with that motivation is, can you envision yourself being successful, being meaningful, being relevant in this new world order? And when you can start saying, hey, I think this could be good for me, or I think I could have a place here, then you'll start letting go and start grabbing onto what's new. And so that, I mean, this is one of those kind of foundational works on the matter.
I think, Greg, here for me. Oh, sorry, Patty.
No, go ahead, Simone.
I think for me, William Bridges and amongst others, there's a lot of different, organizational change approaches that are out there. And you're right, he always regarded as somewhat foundational. And I think what we see here for me, if I think back to our current conversation, the analogy that we're using, that transition starting, of course, is that, Listo's being called, ready to actually launch. I'm on my bar, I'm getting my swing moving and everything. That's great. The neutral zone, what came into my mind as soon as you talked about it was that catch point. That as you said, it was almost like the dead air space, but in that, because it's not a smooth circle. This thing will move back, it will move forth, and it might move in very short cycles, or it could move in longer cycles, depending what's the trick that the trapeze artists are going to perform in the middle, because it's in the middle space here, in that neutral zone, where we're going to have the twists and the turns and whatever amazing leap of physicality was possible at that point in time. And in our case, I think in our business, in our industry, it's that leap of mentality, that leap of emotionality. It's what is that we're going to perform and twist and turn in order to make the mark to reach that new beginning.
I like that. The twist in a midair transfer sometimes has to happen based on pivoting, because where we thought we were going isn't necessarily where we're going to need to land.
Well, that's not applicable this year at all.
No.
Yeah, exactly. But when you look at endings, neutral zone and new beginnings, I like to refer to them as familiar, unfamiliar, and newly familiar. So when you look at what you are comfortable doing in the past, those are your patterns. Those are the personal things that you do yourself and have gotten yourself into. And sometimes you have to reevaluate your belief systems, your values, what you're looking at in terms of who you want to be at that end point. That neutral zone, the unfamiliar, is the hardest zone to enter. The new beginnings, the reason it's exciting is because you're creating new patterns that become familiar as you move forward into the new you. That neutral zone is that unfamiliar place where you have to be very cautious not to let in things like, well, maybe I'm just not ready. Well, maybe I don't have, how many people have you worked with who you believe should get moved forward in terms of promotion, but they themselves have held back and said, I don't think I'm there yet, when they are, right? That's that unfamiliar zone. And there is fear and anxiety in that. And anxiety is probably closer to the one, or lack in faith in self. And I think getting comfortable with the unfamiliar is one of the most important agile moments for yourself.
Oh, I like that. Most comfortable agile moments. I think we need to come back to that. So when you talked about the neutral zone, it really kind of brought home to me that there's this comfort zone. So in reality, comfort zone is that familiar zone, and getting out of your comfort zone is getting into that neutral zone. And I know that humans tend to avoid tend to want to stay in the comfort zone, even in managing change. I will do change on my own terms. I will do change where everybody except me has to change. I will do all sorts of things. But when it really comes down to me changing my personal habits, my personal, like challenging some of the things that I believe to be true, that's very challenging stuff. And this is one of the things that I talk about at a senior leadership level is there is a presumption frequently that senior leadership is on board. They know where they're going. They know what it's going to look like when they get there, and they're leading the charge, and everybody else in the organization is following. What I find all too frequently is that it's actually not true. What I find is that your senior leadership frequently is significantly resistant to change, and for the reason, if nothing else, of they have more to lose, if you will, senior positions, senior level pay, prestige, all of that sort of stuff. And I find it problematic to start telling individuals in an organization, you need to change, when in fact, you need to change. And I think we're seeing that in digital transformation. And it's like digital transformation requires a fundamentally different relationship with leadership, authority, empowerment, and outcomes. And in many cases, that means that your senior leadership needs to change their relationships with those same very things. And that's very difficult.
So
Yeah.
I was thinking that it is the leader who, in relation, it could be senior leaders down the line. The leader, and if this makes it easy, leader starts with L, and so does Listo. The leader is the person who calls go.
Correct.
Would you agree with? And I'm indicating.
I do.
Thank you. Would you agree with that, Patty?
Yes, I would. Absolutely. The leader that calls go, the only way they can call go is if they have actually done the work themselves. That's the trick. They can't know that sweet midair transfer point and the let go moment where they call it unless they've done it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And this is this gap we see between, now I'm going to get really general here, and I'm going to throw this into a bit of a controversial for another topic, but ivory tower and trenches, right?
I love it.
Which we will dive into at some point, no doubt.
At another time. But that what you have to define is we have to understand that digital transformation isn't a, wow, we're going to change our business a bit so that we go digital. You people down there, you take care of that. I'm going to keep doing what I want to do. It doesn't work that way. There is no way you can possibly transform an organization unless you're off your ivory tower and you're willing to enter the trenches and begin doing the work with people.
Yeah, let me leave you with a line. The past can teach us lessons. That's all well and good, but some lessons have to be lived in order to be understood.
Nice.
That's actually brilliant. It really is.
So I think that what we've been talking about to an extent here is, having the faith and the skill of others, as it says. Thank you, Simone, for that. This is where I live and breathe, right here. I'm the guy that always says, ask the people who do the work. Talk to the people who do the work. Don't forget how much work it's going to take to accomplish what it is you're telling us to do. And I think a lot of leaders lose it right there. There's a great story, and I may have quoted this on another episode because I just love this story so much. Gerald Ford inherits the presidency when Nixon resigns. He's looking out the window of the Oval Office one day, and he's looking over toward the Washington Monument, and he said, if that tree wasn't there, I'd have a better view of the monument. Next day, the tree is gone. The tree is gone. Somebody went out there and they cut the tree down on the White House grounds so that he would have a better view of the Washington Monument. And he was stunned by that. And that's when he realized the power of the presidency.
Yeah.
And I think that one of the mistakes a lot of leaders make is they don't realize how much work it takes to accomplish moving from point A to point B. They just say, okay, we're going to point B now. And everything else has to happen to make that work. A lot of good leaders do realize and appreciate. So we have to have the faith and the skill of the people who are building the rigging, hanging the trapeze, making sure that they're spaced properly, making sure that they don't get hung up when they swing, making sure the net is proper so that it doesn't break if people fall, all of
Yeah.
that kind of stuff.
Well, this was a pretty critical thing for me. Like you, Roy, I have an extreme fear of heights. Back in 2007, I did they do the squirrel walks and the whole running out, and I'm climbing out these huge ladders up trees, and I'm in the middle of the canopy, and the whole time, I mean, there's a combination of, everything fighting desperately against doing this, and yet at the same time not wanting to let down my team, and at the same time laughing it off and just pretending everything's okay. And there's a lot of lessons within that, and one of them for me specifically, and thinking about trapeze as well, we've got to carry and be responsible for our own weight and what we bring to that point, and be really appreciative when someone decides, because it's not always their role, but when someone decides that they're going to take a hold and lift us along on that. And that can either be a role that's been specified to them. Yes, you've got to bring this team along, and this is what you need to do. Or it might be just someone from the outside, a coach, a mentor, a friend, that just steps in and says, no, I'm going to pick you up here. I'm actually going to help lift you and take you there. But the thing for me here, it's in the strength of our collaboration. This is a critical point between those two things that you see on the screen, is that it's the strength of our collaboration. It's the hours of practice. It's the hours of building the trust through the slips and the catches, because we do fall and we try again, and we'll, these people that keep picking us up and supporting us. And it's why I have the diagram, it's why I have the photographs behind me, because you've got this most magnificent performance happening, on one side, and on the other side, we've got all the preparation and the people surrounding us and supporting us and cheering us on and helping us get through the hours of getting into sync with the rhythm and the timing. And so it truly is a combination. It truly is a relationship. It truly is the fact that you are actually not on your own on this journey. And that when you're making that mid-air transfer, there's so much more to this whole journey. Those that have brought you to that point, and those that are going to take you the rest of the way and support you underneath when you're going, oh my God, I'm up in this space. What the hell do I do now? And I tried to do the triple and I only did a double. Does it matter? Oh my God, you did it. You took the step.
I love that. I love that. The other thing I love is that two of my good friends have just told me about their fear of heights. And I have a little story I want to share. So my brother is a mountain climber. He has climbed face of McKinley that no one else has successfully climbed, and others have died trying. He is an amazing climber. His sister has great fear of heights. And at one point he said, we've got to work with you on this. So he took me climbing one weekend, and it was a little place called Spires Rock in Montana. And he had a little group that he was taking out to teach. He used to own a mountain equipment and climbing store and with a wall and everything. And he took us out. And the thing about learning to climb when you're afraid of heights is the trust level is massive. You have to listen to everything he says, because not only are you learning to climb, the person belaying you, who is holding the rope that keeps you from falling, is learning to belay. And so the two of you have to have this music between you, this understanding between you of what the other person is doing. And but you can't just rely on that person.
Nope.
You have to rely on your fingertips. You have to be strong enough to pull your body up, and how your toes fit in the rocks and where you find a rock. And so there's personal responsibility, which is what I think you're talking about, Simone, and the trust of someone else who is there to help you and guide you. And in those moments where you can't find a foothold, they're willing to say, yep, I've got you. And being able to do that. Now, did that solve my fear of heights? It got me higher. It didn't solve my fear of heights, but it got me higher.
Yes.
But it was a wonderful lesson in understanding and learning about the effort involved. And when I look at my brother, I honestly, I say he does climbing ballet because to watch him is just remarkable and specifically incredible. He's just like a goat on that mountain.
I watch so many of my friends that are into that. Oh, sorry, Patty, go on.
That's okay. I was just going to say, but he isn't that way just because he climbs. He's that way because he does a 10K run, because he eats properly, because he has a weight set in his basement that he doesn't have clothes hanging on it. You know, he is that person that understands in order to achieve his ability. He's climbed the 5 highest mountains in Europe. He's done some remarkable things. But in order to achieve that, it's the things he brings into it as well. And I think when we're looking at change and transformation, it's really important for us to understand that there's more involved in the act itself. It's everything behind it that you bring into it that helps create trust and confidence and ability.
And let me clarify when I use the word weight here, guys, that because there is a physical fitness that comes along with some of the things we've talked about, whether it's trapeze or mountain climbing or hiking or whatever it is that you're actually doing. Yes, I mean, obviously that is part of the risk management, isn't it? Understanding what's involved and that kind of thing, and that's fine. But I also want to just acknowledge too that even in our industry, when we're doing this mid-air transfer, that when I talk about weight, I'm also talking about our mental weight and our emotional weight. And those for me are very important things that we address along with the physical health, because you can actually be, muscle weighs heavier than fat. You know, you talk to anyone, you know these things. So someone can be absolutely incredible physical shape, yet but not have the mental and emotional shape to go along with making that transfer that needs doing. So it is a collaboration, it is a combination, and we need to look at all aspects, not just one.
I'm going to give a shout out here, which is something we don't do regularly, but as we're talking about the whole world of climbing and how it relates to these other topics that we've been talking about, I'm just going to mention Manly Feinberg. Manly is a climber, and he has taught his family to climb. He teaches other people to climb, but he uses that as a method also of teaching leadership. And I'm thinking specifically, we were talking earlier about that transitional moment when you start to go, that the time that you go. And there's a wonderful video on Manly's website, verticallessons.com, where he's talking somebody he doesn't even know up this chimney rock, and they have to go across an empty space, and she's very fearful of doing that, and he just talks her through it, and it's really quite remarkable. So I would definitely look Manly up if you want to see how leadership and the idea of climbing relate to each other. And one of his things is, who are you on belay for?
I was just going to say, I got a text one day from an undisclosed friend of mine, good friend of mine, who said, "I just want you to know I'm on belay for you." And I'm like, thanks. What? Nice. Well, it turns out that person was attending one of his sessions, and but it's true, they are on belay for me. So this is one of those realities that what I'm showing, what's on the screen now, is that I'm extraordinarily ordinary. And that's relevant because I think there's so much emphasis on, being exceptional or being the best or being world class or all these other things. And we all kind of instinctively, I think, perhaps know that, like, I don't know that I'm all that. I don't know that I'm the best of anything that I do, but I'm pretty effective in those things that I've set out to do. And part of the reason is I recognize that I am extraordinarily ordinary. And so I don't know that it's easier for some people to go through transitions. I don't know that it's easier for people to achieve kind of the trapeze artist, if you will. It's the practice, it's the dedication, it's the work that goes into it. that turns ordinary people into extraordinary circumstances around that. So that's why this is included in here. Is like, this isn't about, being, in incredibly gifted or being a superhero or superhero-like kind of thing. You can be incredibly effective by being extraordinarily ordinary.
I love that. Doing ordinary things extraordinarily well, right? That's an important piece of just being able to achieve in our regular life. I want to be the best parent I can. I want to be the best coworker I can. Maybe I don't aspire to being the boss, but I really am a great engineer, or any of those pieces that I want to do it well. I want to make sure that I do my research and my homework, and I work hard at that. Yeah, preparation builds resilience.
Yeah, that is. I don't know that we can really emphasize that enough. Roy, maybe you know the name of the musician, but a classically trained musician said, if it was asked, why do you practice 8 hours a day? And his answer went something like this. I'll probably hack it up and you can Google it, but it was something like this: if I miss a day of practice, I will notice. If I miss 2 days of practice, the critics will notice. And if I miss a week's worth of practice, everybody will notice. In other words, you've got to stay on your game. You've got to keep your preparation. You don't go compete in a 10K successfully by going out that morning and saying, well, I think I can make 6.5 miles, or 6 point, whatever it is, 2 miles. You get there by practicing. You get there by running. You get there by doing the day after day. That behind the scenes preparation that isn't glamorous. It's often unglorious, but it brings you to the point where you are able to do the thing that you set out to do.
It's
Absolutely.
most often unglorious. Simone?
Oh, yes, it certainly is. It's really quite interesting. There's quite a number of people. In fact, there's 2 or 3 key people I could name in regards to where I think their work around resilience is amazing. But here's a key lesson. For me, resilience is not something you have as a result of only having failed once. And we can talk about all the whole Edison, I found 1,000 ways to fail, when creating the light bulb and all that kind of stuff. That's fine, but it's so much more than that. And it's a combination of things. It's a combination of personal and professional, because we are a whole being and we bring our whole selves to what we are doing. Even if we are only subconsciously doing so, the whole being still exists. So that is, we have failed. If we look back, and to me, I don't like the word failure. To me, it's not so much, it's about those lessons lived. It's about those things that we've learned. And occasionally we make the same mistakes more than once. I wish we didn't, but that's just the way life is. But resilience really is, and it's not about, and I will quote Karen Ferris on this, because she's always said that we don't bounce back, we actually bounce forward, the more we actually build our resilience. And I think that's a really critical point.
One piece about resilience that we don't talk a lot about is listening to others. We have a tendency to believe others' interpretation of who we are. And when we have a crazy idea or a place we want to go or a transformation we want to make, we'll have someone we really trust or love tell us, that doesn't sound like a good idea, or that's too risky, or I don't think you ever will. Or one of the people who I've been following for many, many years is Janine Shepherd, who in 1988, she was supposed to be in Calgary, actually, to participate in the Olympics. She was riding her bike and training in Australia and was hit by a truck. And
yeah, I know that. I remember that.
Yeah, she has an amazing story, but part of the resilience is not listening to the doctors. The doctors told her, you will never. And she's like, yeah, watch me. Right. So there is this confidence you need to have in self. that
Yes.
you do not listen to the story of others for who you are. And I think that's a big piece of resilience.
Definitely. You've got to come back to your own story. You've got to come back and look at all of those things along the way. Hey, we're still here.
We are still here. Here we
We're
are.
still here.
All four of us.
And
still
yeah,
here.
exactly. And I think that's a really interesting thing. And one of the really key things I love about KTLO and what we're doing here is that all four of us have had different journeys. We've had similarities in some of the things that we've come across, but our take on that, our perspectives, or some of the particular factors that have been involved in that does shift our perspectives on that and how we come at that and how we move forward. But that's the beauty of it. And if we can take that into, as we make that mid-air transition, if we can take, that's part of that collaboration and working together in that preparation of saying, when I'm ready to let go, there is that element of, I'm going to reach out now. I want to reach out on this.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the
Patty,
next part of the story.
So Patty, when I have a brilliant, a bold idea, I want to call you up and I want you to say, I think you should totally go for it. I think you should go for it.
Don't I already?
Yes, you do actually. Pat, just so you know, everybody that's listening, Patty is that one who, when she says you can do this, she's not just being a positive optimist. I mean, she's good at that. But one of the things that she does is she takes what I would consider this is unrehearsed, and she's looking really uncomfortable right now, so I'm going to go for it. But what she will do is she will assess what she knows about you and do what essentially would be a risk analysis. And when she says you can do this, then she means that. And she might say, you're going to have to work on this and this. And those things might be uncomfortable to hear, but that's part of her risk assessment of you and going off on your bold idea. So I'm just saying that, Patty.
Being bold.
See, that's the kind of feedback you get from Patty. From me, you get snarky comments, but that's just,
Actually,
but that's part of the story. That's the storytelling side. You see, that's the thing. There's there's this element of realism that comes into that. That's really critical and important for us to do our risk assessment with.
That's our net, right? That's our support system. I mean, we couldn't have done this live if we hadn't had a whole lot of conversations before and really built up this supportive tribe, this support network that we have together. We all live in different parts of the world. We're all trying really hard to move on with different ideas and different thoughts. We all have our own brands. And yet when we come together, we have this unification of this support system. And everybody needs their little tribe, right? They, in order to make sure that they're got people to bounce stuff off of, who are going to tell them the truth. But in the same token,
that's the trust factor. Can we live with that truth? Okay, fact and truth, that's a whole nother other conversation. Maybe it fits into the ivory tower.
Maybe it does, and maybe that's our next episode. When we come back on next Friday, right here on KTLO, keeping
the learning
on.